You're listening to the Third and Long podcast with Alec Pequignot. And today's show will cover, on today's episode, we will be covering Nico Iamaleava's transfer to UCLA. We will be talking about the expectations for Gunnar Stockton as the starting quarterback at Georgia, how USF will do in 2025, Bryce Underwood, expectations for Bryce Underwood and how good he could be, and much, much more. We are going to get started with the first topic today, and each topic gets 7 minutes, and we're going to talk about Nico Iamaleava transferring to UCLA. I don't know how I feel about this transfer in terms of the fit. DeAndre Foster does get his quarterback, but the big question here is, was it really all about the money for Nico? If it was, why didn't he go somewhere else? Because there was other schools that wanted him. Alabama wanted him. Georgia probably wanted him, but those are SEC schools, and SEC and the rule in the SEC is you can't transfer to another SEC school. So I think that's why he probably ended up choosing to go to transferring to UCLA. The whole issue was with Nico was money. He wanted, according to multiple reports that came out of his camp, he wanted $4 million in NIL money, which, I'm sorry, I don't think he's worth that much NIL money. To me, I want to know what other people have to say, but I do feel like it's a good fit for both UCLA and for Nico. And they are also trying to get Nico's brother, so they would be set at quarterback even after Nico leaves. Nico had some good games last year for Tennessee. He had some bad games. The issue I have with Nico is, what Nico Iamaleava are you going to get? Are you going to get the Nico that was good during the regular season, or are you going to get the Nico that Tennessee got in the playoff game against Ohio State, where he just was horrendous and didn't do very good? And if you get the Nico you got during certain regular season games for Tennessee, I think UCLA is going to be in good shape. But if you get the Nico you got in the playoff game, oh boy, UCLA would be in big trouble. And here's where my expectations lie for Nico and UCLA. I think they're going to be mid-table in the Big Ten this year. They're going to be competitive, but I don't know if they're going to be in the top echelon of Big Ten teams with Ohio State, with Michigan, with Penn State, Indiana, Michigan State, who I think is going to take a bigger step. But Nico, my expectations for Nico, I'm hyped to see Nico in a new system. Got 3.5 minutes. I'm hyped to see Nico in a new system with the UCLA. And the whole issue, he came out and said that it had nothing to do with money. It was all about the Tennessee offense. That was the problem. And that's why he transferred. And to what extent do I believe that? I don't know how much I believe that theory of him transferring because it was the offense. I feel like it was more geared toward that it was the NIL money that he wanted that Tennessee wouldn't give him to stay. That is why I feel like Nico left. Now with UCLA, like I said a minute ago, I feel like Nico and UCLA, good fit. And I feel like there's some promise now in UCLA. I feel like UCLA football fans have something to look forward to in 2025 and beyond. Because I don't think Nico's going to leave you guys after 1 year. I think he's staying for at least 2, maybe at least 2 years, and then he'll go pro, and then you have his brother Madden Iamaleava. But the downside is this thing could blow up in your face, and then you're like, oh, let's go back in the portal and try to find a quarterback going into 2026 if Nico doesn't work out, which I'm hoping for shits and grin, for giggles and laughs, that Nico does work out in UCLA, because if it doesn't, oh boy, it ain't going to be a beautiful sight for UCLA fans. And they're going to want DeAndre Foster fired, and they're going to want to find, they're going to want the AD and the boosters to try to find a new head coach. So I hope y'all are UCLA fans are ready for Nico. My expectations for Nico are, I'm not going to say high, but they're slightly low. And I do expect Nico to have a really good season for UCLA this year and do good and lead UCLA to a bowl game and maybe win a bowl game, but they will not win the Big Ten this year. And that's a wrap for that segment. We're going to reset. The next segment is, here are my expectations for and how I think Gunnar Stockton's going to do as QB1 for Georgia in 2025. So Gunnar Stockton played in a couple games last year for Georgia, and the biggest game he played in was the college football playoff game, because Carson Beck, who's now at Miami, was hurt, and Gunnar Stockton had some bright spots in the playoff game, but he also struggled. And I feel like Gunnar Stockton, he's now had a full offseason at Georgia. And Kirby Smarts already came out and said that Gunnar Stockton looks really good and that he's going to be the front runner to be the starting quarterback at Georgia this year. So I'm not going to say high expectations for Stockton, but my expectations are in the middle. If his receivers can be good, and we know how certain Georgia receivers are, not going to get into that, but what can we expect from Gunnar? I expect maybe 20 to 25 touchdowns, passing touchdowns, and then maybe 6 or 7 rushing touchdowns, and at least 2,000 or 3,000 yards passing with 600 or 700 yards rushing. And Georgia in the neck of the playoff picture, in the thick of the playoff picture, throughout the season until maybe they lose 2 games. But they do get a good bowl game. And Stockton is going to lead them to a really good season. Georgia fans, you have nothing to worry about at all. And this Georgia team, we know how Georgia is. They're good. They have good running backs. Wide receivers are question marks sometimes. Quarterback, like I said with Gunnar Stockton a minute ago, Georgia's pretty good at quarterback. But there's a downside. Gunnar could also struggle because Georgia is losing a couple offensive linemen and having to replace a couple O linemen with newcomers. Tate Rutledge is gone. I think they're losing one or two other offensive linemen, but they got Jackson Cantwell coming on a visit. So as we know, they're going to just, what Georgia does is reload. And I expect Georgia and Gunnar Stockton to have a really good season. And with the 3 minutes left in this segment, let's talk a little bit for the last 3 minutes of this segment. Let's talk about the SEC. I think the SEC is going to be just as good as it was last year with Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma. I just named you 7 teams right there that I think are going to be good in the SEC this year. Now, in what order is that going to be? I have zero idea. And I will tell you this, I'm really intrigued to see how good John Mateer could be at Oklahoma. 2 minutes. John Mateer was at Washington State last year and had a really good season, entered the portal, followed his offensive coordinator from Washington State to Oklahoma. And I think that John Mateer is going to have a really good year at Oklahoma. He's going to pop off. He's going to come back to this video later once the season starts, and it's after the first 3 weeks of the season. John Mateer, this is the bold prediction, and I do make a lot of bold predictions on this show. John Mateer will be in the Heisman race, and Oklahoma will be ranked in the top 10 of the AP poll. And I know people don't care about the AP poll, and as y'all know, I do my own rankings. I don't follow any of the criteria that the AP poll does. As you saw the last 2 years, I will explain with the last minute 30 how my rankings work. So, and you'll see my rankings every week, either on YouTube or Twitter. And my Twitter is linked down, and it will be linked down in the description after the video. But how my rankings work is I do it based on if a team wins 2 games in a row, they're in. If they lose 2 in a row, they're out. If they win by 10 points or more, they move up. If they lose by 10 points or more, they move down. And say they were at number 20 or number 25, they would then be eliminated and moved out from the rankings until, and the rankings fluctuate every week. They change. If there's a team that's not in there that week, they will be in the rankings next week, and so on and so forth. And also this year, I am debuting the MVP chart, which will be released week 1. And I will get more into that later on. Reset. The next segment, the next topic we are talking about in the opening segment here is how good I think USF can be this year. And you will see my odds, in my opinion, to win the AAC toward the end of the show. But I think USF, they returned a lot from last year. I mean, they did lose Sean Atkins. They did lose a couple other guys in the transfer portal, but they bring back Byron Brown. Year 3 under Alex Golish. And my co-host that runs the Helmet to Helmet podcast with me, which that is debuting July 29th. He will be at the South Florida spring game tomorrow. So I will get some insights from him from the spring game and have it for you on the next show. But I think USF can potentially win the AAC this year. I'm not going to spoil who my odds-on favorite is to win the AAC yet. That you will find out toward, like I said, that's the last segment of the show. Very last segment of the show. But USF, they did have another 8-win season last year. 8-5, which is, I think, what everybody expected them to do. And they did it for the most part without Byron Brown. He was out injured with an injury, and Bryce Archie stepped up and delivered. So now we know if Byron Brown does get hurt again, that Bryce Archie's there, and he's more than capable of stepping up and filling in at quarterback. With that also being said, the USF does return a bunch of their wide receivers. Joshua Porter, Peyton Singletary, Jonathan Eccles, and they return a lot of offensive line too. A lot of their offensive linemen as well. And same with the defense. They have the highest returning production in the AAC. If anybody wants to, they can correct me in the comment section if I am wrong. I will also take your feedback in the comment section. But I expect USF to have another, at most, 8-win season, because if you look at their schedule, their first couple of games are not easy. They get Boise State. I believe it's week number 2. It's either week 1 or week 2 they get Boise State. Then they get Miami. No, week 1 is a cupcake game. Week 2, they play at Florida. Week 3 is Boise State. And then they get into conference play. I think if they can go to, and I believe that, yes, they also do play Miami. And I believe it's at Miami this year. So if they can go 2-2 through their first 4 games, they'll be sitting pretty, because Miami's not going to be an easy game. Boise State was just in the playoff last year. Boise State was in the college football playoff last year, so you know that's going to be a tough game. And then they go to Ben Hill Griffin Stadium week 2 and play Florida. That's not going to be easy at all. Those first 4 out of 5 games for USF are not going to be easy. And then it's not going to be easy in conference play either, because look at FAU. FAU's got a new coach. Look at UAB. They've got a new coach. Tulsa's got a new coach. East Carolina's got a new head coach. But I think USF, out of everybody, they have the most experience on offense and defense. And I feel like USF, if everybody stays healthy, they can do something special in the AAC. And they may find their way sneaking into, backdooring their way into that 12 seed for the playoff. The key is Byron Brown. Byron Brown needs to stay on the field, stay healthy. He can't get hurt. And I'm going to say this. I like Byron Brown running the ball, but I think you need to limit how many times per game on offense that he gets the ball on a design QB run. Because you want to he is an electric player. You want to keep him healthy the entire season. And if you could do that, if you could keep him healthy the entire season, USF will be going a lot. They will be doing magical things, and they will be playing probably for a conference title. And to wrap up, because I got a minute 20 on this segment, and I can see USF going 9-4, 9-3, 10-2, maybe, because Miami is replacing a lot on offense. So is, Florida, not really. Lagway's back. But I can see USF having a really, really good season. Like I said, I could see them winning the AAC. And 40 seconds left. Next segment, we get to the middle of the show now. And I'm going to talk about we're going to do 5. We're actually going to change it to 5 minutes so it goes quicker. Next segment, 5 minutes of me talking about, I'm an Ohio State fan, so this is non-biased opinion on Bryce Underwood, my expectations for him in 2025 and how good he could be. So Bryce Underwood, as we know, Michigan paid him $12.5 million to commit to Michigan instead of going to LSU. And in my opinion, as you know, it's all about the almighty dollar now in college football. And I think Michigan, I have watched tape on Bryce Underwood. And I know I've made some comments that he's overrated. He is not overrated. He's the real deal. And dare I say, how good could he be? And these are lofty expectations for a kid that's going into his freshman year at Michigan. I think he could be as good as a guy that's going to be the Vikings starting quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. That's how good I think Bryce Underwood could be. I think he could be better than J.J. McCarthy. It's just Sharon Moore. They have a new offensive coordinator now at Michigan. And what kind of offense are we going to see Michigan run in 2025? Is it going to be the offense where, obviously, you do have some good running backs? You have Jordan Marshall. You have Khalil Mullings, I believe. Michigan fans, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm pretty sure I do keep up with Michigan, but I'm pretty sure Khalil Mullings is back. So you have Marshall and Mullings as your running backs. A lot of unproven talent at wide receiver. Tight end, you're replacing Colston Loveland. Offensive line has always been the strong point on offense for Michigan. From Graham Glasgow to you can name any offensive lineman you want that's been at Michigan. They're in the NFL now. Ben Bredesen was at Michigan. But look at their offensive line. Their offensive line is going to be good. Defensively, they are losing a ton. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson. But I like every big team in college football. What happens? They don't rebuild, they reload. And that's what Michigan's doing on defense. Just like on offense. They lost J.J. McCarthy. Davis Warren was the quarterback last year. They did bring in Mikey Keene, but Mikey Keene's hurt. So that leads me to believe that Bryce Underwood is going to start. I don't know how many games in 2025, but he's going to start probably the first few games of the year until Mikey Keene is recovered from injury. And you look at their game week number 2. They play in Norman against Oklahoma. That is a hostile environment. And you got a freshman quarterback that's going in there week number 2. I would be scared if I was Michigan. I don't have any idea of what the spread is for the Michigan-Oklahoma game yet. But if I did, I would tell you, and I would take whatever the point spread is in Oklahoma, because you got, like I said, you got a freshman QB, and it ain't going to be beautiful. It ain't going to be a good sight. And Bryce Underwood, I do expect him to be really good, and I don't think he's going to be a guy that sticks around for all 4 years. I think he's going to stay at Michigan for 2 or 3 years, at the max 2, and then maybe with the outside shot, Sherrone Moore gets canned after his second year as the quarterback at Michigan. He jumps into Portland and goes somewhere else. But if that doesn't happen, he stays at Michigan for 3 years and leads them to the promised land. And the next segment, the next thing we're going to talk about is Missouri and their expectations for quarterback Bo Peguila in 2025. So Missouri, if you haven't seen Missouri's schedule in 2025, they got dealt a good card by the SEC again for like the third year in 4 years. But this year they don't have Brady Cook. They have Penn State transfer quarterback Bo Peguila. Bo Peguila. And Peguila, the jury's out on him. We don't know how good he's going to be yet, due to the honest fact that he barely played at Penn State. He was the backup quarterback. They'd bring him in on short yardage. And so I don't honestly know how Bo Peguila is going to be this year at Missouri. I think Missouri is going to be fine now. They did lose a lot. They lost Cody Schrader. They lost Luther Burden. But I see potential with some of the moves they made in the portal. For example, I see potential in Bo Peguila. I think Eli Drinkowitz, Brady Cook was a good quarterback, but I don't think that's the necessary quarterback that Drinkowitz wanted. I think he wanted a guy like Peguila, who can be physical, has a good live arm, can also run. Because I think now Missouri can actually open the offense a lot more. And they're not kind of one-dimensional where if they can't pass because all the DBs are pressing the receivers and they have to run the ball and the box is stacked with 7 or 8 seven down defenders. I think now that Peguila is going to be the quarterback, they can play action, and that playbook, that Missouri offensive playbook, is wide open. There's absolutely zero chance that Missouri fails this. Now, there's the off chance they do, and they have a horrible season, and Drinkowitz ends up getting fired at the end of the season. Now, what are the chances of that happening? It's probably slim. Very slim. I don't see it happening at all. Maybe a 30, I'm going to say 20% chance that Missouri has a horrible season. Drinkowitz gets fired and they look for a new head coach, and Peguila jumps in the transfer portal again and leaves. I don't think that happens. And now, these next few segments are only going to be 4 minutes, so we can speed this up because I know some people have places to be. If you want to listen to the audio version of this podcast before I get to the next segment, all you have to do is go to Spotify and search up Third and Long Podcast. And that is where you can find the audio version of the podcast. I highly recommend listening to the podcast there, as well as watching it on the video version on YouTube. Next, we are going to talk about who I think will be this year's Indiana and go from having a 3-win season to winning 10 games. I have 3 teams in mind for this. 2 of them are in the ACC. One is Wake Forest. Jake Dicker is the new head coach of Wake Forest. And I believe Wake Forest can surprise some people in the ACC. They went 3-9 last year. Look, that's what Indiana did in Tom Allen's last year. And then Kirk Cignetti got there last year and turned them into a 10-win team. Do I think Wake Forest can do that? Absolutely, I do. I think Wake Forest can absolutely win 10 games. Now, will they win the ACC? Probably not. That's not what Indiana did last year. They didn't win the Big Ten. But I absolutely think that Wake Forest can be that 10-win team, 9-10 wins, and make some noise in the ACC. The other ACC team that I think can make that leap, they've been disappointing the last 2 years, and I went and saw them in person last year, Virginia Tech. I think if Kyron Drones stayed healthy all last year, and they didn't lose to Vanderbilt to open the season, I think we would have been talking about Virginia Tech being in the ACC title game and potentially being a part of the playoff. And I think, yes, they did win. They did go 7. They did have 6 wins, but I think they can double that and win 10 games this year if everybody on that offense stays healthy. From Kyron Drones to Benji Gosnell to their wide receivers to the offensive line. And if head coach Brett Pry can put it all together, I see Virginia Tech winning 10 games and taking that leap that Indiana did after they hired a new head coach. And the last team that I think could take that leap, they're in the AAC. I talked about USF. USF didn't have a bad year last year. Another Florida team in that conference did. It was FAU. FAU fired Tom Herman and hired Zach Kittley. Now, we don't know much about Zach Kittley as a head coach. We knew he was a good offensive coordinator at Texas Tech. Now, can he take over a team and help them win more than 3 games? I believe he can. And I believe FAU is that team that nobody's looking at in the AAC to make a leap like Navy and Army did last year. Because Navy had a new head coach in Brian Newberry. Jeff Monken is still the head coach at Army. And neither of those teams were expected to do anything in football last year. But they did. And you know what? I'll throw a bonus team in there. How about a team like Kennesaw State? 2-10 last year. They get Jerry Mack as their new head coach. And I think Kennesaw State can make that leap. Next topic is, and I'm going to make a little switch here. It is going to be, I was supposed to talk about Arizona State and how they will win the Big 12 in 2025. That's going to be the last segment I cover. We are going to switch. We're going to go who will win the AAC in 2025. And that's going to get about 8 minutes. Let me just pull it up and then we can start talking about it. Share screen. So, let's get this started. So, here are my odds. The best odds, in my opinion, to win the AAC in the 2025 college football season. And this goes from worst to best. So, worst, we start at number 14. It is Tulsa. I'm giving them a 10% chance to win the AAC. So, Tulsa fans, you're saying there's a chance. Yes, I am. I'm giving you a 10% chance to win the AAC. I like the new head coach you got, but I don't know. There's a lot unknown with the rest of that staff and the guys you have on your on the roster. So if one of those guys clicks, that percentage chance could easily change from 10 later on in the season, maybe to 15, maybe 20. So that is Tulsa at 14. At 13 is Rice. 15% chance to win the AAC. And as you notice, the teams that I have at the bottom have new head coaches, all the way up to 9 with FAU. Rice has a new head coach as well. That is why they have a 15% chance. Not saying that it can't happen. I think maybe there's an outside shot it can, but stuff needs to click for Rice in order for them to be able to compete for the AAC title. At number 12 is Charlotte. They also have a new head coach, Tim Elvin. And I'm giving them a 20% chance to win the AAC. A 25% chance to win the AAC. Yes, I know their odds are a little bit higher than Charlotte. But I believe in a guy like Casey Keeler. I see what he did at Jacksonville at Sam Houston. Sam Houston was pretty good in the FCS, and then he brought them. They got moved up to the FBS, and they were just as good. That's how he parlayed the Sam Houston job into getting the job at Temple. At least that's what I believe. But I think Temple's still maybe 1 or 2 years away from being a real competitive contender in the AAC. At number 10 is East Carolina. 35% chance to win the AAC in 2025. As you know, ECU also has a new head football coach too. And we don't know who their quarterback's going to be. But if they can get the same production they got after they fired Mike Houston last year, I think they're right now they're at 35%. But I think they could be a team that sneaks up into the top 6 and maybe can win the AAC out of nowhere. At number 9 is FAU. Lost Cam Fancher, lost CJ Campbell. They've got a new head coach. They're also at 35% chance to win the AAC, just like ECU. But I have a little more faith in Zach Kittley than I do in a new ECU head coach. Zach Kittley's an offensive-minded head coach, and I feel like Zach Kittley can take FAU and take them from a 3-win team, what they were in 2024, to a 8 or 9 win team in 2025, and maybe with the outside shot, one of the teams in front of them slips, they end up in that AAC title game. At number 8 is North Texas. 55% chance to win the AAC in 2025. And with North Texas, I like what they've done in the portal. They did lose a couple guys in the portal. They lost a defensive back to USF. Now, do I think that ECU? Do I think North Texas is good? Yes. Are they good enough to be in the top 7? No. But they could be another team like FAU, ECU, maybe Temple, that right now they're at 8. But if they get off to this torrid hot start, they could skyrocket their chances at winning the AAC. Number 7, Navy, 64% chance. Brian Newberry has brought a new style to Navy. They still run the ball a lot, but they're not afraid to throw the ball. And that's not something we've ever seen from Navy. Navy's not really a team that we knew before last year that would throw the ball. They were more of this running gun team that would line up. They would run the ball like 40 or 50 times a game for 300 or 400 yards. And that's how they would chew away the clock. Now, with Navy, obviously, as I just said, they're going to run the football. And that can be a good pill of success. But there's teams in front of them that I will talk about in a minute that I think have better opportunity of winning the AAC. And one of those teams is at number 6, UTSA. Owen McCowan looks like he could be the real deal. I've got UTSA at a 74% chance to win the AAC this year. I know that's high, but I feel like there's cause for optimism for UTSA in 2025 for winning the AAC. We need to speed this up. Number 5 is Memphis. 76% chance. The only reason they're not higher is Seth Hennigan's gone. Rock Thomas is gone. Number 4 at 77% chance, UAB. Yes, I know UAB should have been lower, but they weren't. Number 3, Tulane, 85%. Number 2, USF at 93%. And I will talk about 3. So back to Tulane at 3. Tulane, Darian Mintz is gone. He went to Duke. They did bring in what I thought was some good transfers, and I think they can compete for an AAC title. Number 2, USF. I just talked about how good I thought they were going to be earlier. And especially with Byron Brown State's helping. That's why they have the second best odds of winning the AAC. And at number 1 is Army. Self-explanatory. They won the conference last year. And now we get to another segment, 5 minutes long. How hyped I am for Julian Sayin as QB1 at Ohio State in 2025. Now, we got to see a little bit of Julian Sayin last year with Will Howard at quarterback last year, but this is Julian Sayin's team in 2025, and he's got some lofty expectations. He's got to follow in the footsteps of what Will Howard did last year for the Buckeyes at Ohio State, and I think he can. He looked really good in the spring game, and the expectations are through the roof for a guy like Julian Sayin. Do I think he's going to live up to those expectations? Absolutely. And Ohio State might lose maybe one game this year, maybe two. The only two games I could see them losing, they do not play Oregon this year during the regular season. They play their first game is at home against Texas. And I'm hoping that's a night game. Their second game they might lose is against Michigan, which they've lost to Michigan 4 years in a row. Will they break that trend? I believe they can this year because, like I said earlier, Michigan is replacing a lot. But back to the talk on Julian Sayin. I think Sayin's going to throw for at least 30 touchdowns with 6 or 7 rushing, 5 interceptions, over 3,000 yards passing, and 11 interceptions. And the final segment on the show today. And if you've enjoyed this, please remember to like and subscribe and turn on notifications. And check out the community poll that I posted today. Quickly, we're going to cover why I think Arizona State can win the Big 12 in 2025. So, and this is going to be rapid fire, quick. To put it short and sweet, look at Colorado. They lost Shador. They lost Travis Hunter. They lost Shiloh. They've lost a lot on offense and defense. BYU's still there. But how good is BYU going to be this year? I know Arizona State lost Cam Scotabo, but I believe that Arizona State will win the Big 12. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up today's episode of the Third and Long podcast. We will see you with another Third and Long podcast episode in a couple of weeks. Please remember to like, subscribe, turn on notifications. And don't forget to listen to the audio version of this podcast over on Spotify by searching Third and Long Podcast. That is where you can find all of my podcasts. Please give them a 5-star rating. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.